Back in March 2017, we saw the release for The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, the best-selling Zelda game by a large margin, and also arguably for many, one of the greatest games ever made. And here we are, almost 6 years later, and by the time of the release of its sequel will be more than 6+ years for Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild's direct sequel. The amount of hype and anticipation there is for this game is incredibly high. We've been waiting for this the entire Switch lifecycle basically. And yet with just a few months to go, we know next to nothing about this game beyond its title, a few quick gameplay snippets, and some cryptic cutscenes about the story. We know basically nothing about this game. In comparison to what we knew about Breath of the Wild just a couple months before its release, the difference is significant. So what's going on here? Why is Nintendo holding back? And when will they finally give us all the information we need before we get Tears of the Kingdom? Could it be that they're just going to wait for a general Nintendo Direct in the usual February time where they'll just give us a 3-minute trailer? Or does Nintendo have something bigger planned? Could it be that maybe they have a major, significant Nintendo Direct entirely focused on The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom? Could this be happening, and potentially really soon? Well, that's what we're talking about today. Welcome everyone, this is On Just Restart, and yes, today we're going to be talking about a Tears of the Kingdom specific Nintendo Direct. I think this could be happening, it makes sense, I think it could be happening even really soon, and I think it's time we finally fully talk about this topic. So, the reason I decided to talk about this today is because there is a rumor that maybe we get a Tears of the Kingdom Nintendo Direct next week. Now, the source of this rumor seems kind of suspect, so I'm not fully believing it. The whole story is on Nintendo Prime's channel, he's the one who broke the story. His video will be linked in the description below. I don't really want to focus on this rumor that seems perhaps not so reliable, but I do want to talk about why it makes sense that there should be a Tears of the Kingdom Direct fairly soon before they actually announce this thing. So let's get into why actually a Tears of the Kingdom Direct makes sense and perhaps really soon. So, firstly, we need to know about this game. This is a huge game. This game has potential to perhaps surpass even Breath of the Wild itself, the best-selling Zelda game of all time and one of the best-selling games on Switch. It could potentially surpass Breath of the Wild. That I am somewhat skeptical of because I feel like we are nearing the end of a generation. However, when we take a look at the early on sales for Xenoblade Chronicles 3, for Splatoon 3, for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, these games are pacing to beat their predecessors. When you take into consideration that there are over 118 million people last I checked that own the Switch, and there are still a lot of strong sales happening for Switch likely for a couple more years, it's possible that these games will beat their predecessors, and the same can be said for Tears of the Kingdom. Especially if Nintendo has some sort of plan for Tears of the Kingdom when it comes to their next big system. Now, I'm not trying to argue currently that Tears of the Kingdom is going to launch alongside Nintendo's next big system. It's becoming increasingly less and less likely as the year draws on, with Tears of the Kingdom's release coming May 12th. They would need to talk about the system sooner than later, and it's seeming like that we may have to wait a little bit longer for that. But regardless, Zelda is meant to push hardware. So I do think that the release for Tears of the Kingdom does mark the end of a generation and that transition onto the next one. So Switch will still be supported likely for a few more years, but I do think the next system could come out and they'll be existing alongside of each other, and likely there will be DLC support for Tears of the Kingdom for about a year after its release, and I could see this window being sometime when the next big Switch comes out, and there very well will be some sort of enhanced version for that system. So there's even more reason to push Tears of the Kingdom, because Tears of the Kingdom has a chance to surpass Breath of the Wild with just Switch, but it also will likely have some sort of version that will be adapted for the next system that will also push that system, and there will be sales to be had on there as well. And even if Tears of the Kingdom doesn't beat Breath of the Wild, it has a great chance to come close. It's at least going to sell 10 million, which would just be a fraction of Breath of the Wild sales. I would say more likely it would come a lot closer, maybe above 20 million, which is an incredible number. So there is tons of reason to support and market this game, and you could argue Nintendo is focusing on marketing a lot of other games that are a lot smaller with far less sales potential here, and it's just a little strange when you think about it actually. Take a look at Breath of the Wild, how Nintendo handled that. Back at E3 2016, Nintendo just had one game, and that one game was Breath of the Wild. People thought it was weird, it was strange to just have one game at the show, but Nintendo dominated the show with just this one very game. It was their entire focus, their entire media blowout. There was so much footage and information that came out for Breath of the Wild during that time. It was unprecedented, and it was amazing, and yet they really didn't spoil that much about the game. But we still learned a lot, and we had a lot to get us excited for its release, and people were convinced that this was the game they needed. And that was 9 months before its release. In contrast, here we are, 4 months before the release for Tears of the Kingdom, and we do know the title, I'll give Nintendo that, but we have less than 5 minutes of total footage on this game, and most of that footage is just cryptic cave paintings and stone tablets, some weird cutscenes, and very, very little gameplay. We know next to nothing about this game, and yet with its potential to come close or even surpass Breath of the Wild in terms of sales, it's a very strange situation. Nintendo celebrates Zelda. Zelda, the mainline series, is typically the best of Nintendo when it comes to their development. We look at The Legend of Zelda as like the cutting edge Nintendo. Whatever Nintendo does with their next big Zelda, that sort of sets a precedent for years to come and for others to follow. Breath of the Wild has changed how we look at open air games. So many games have tried to mimic Breath of the Wild ever since its release. So Tears of the Kingdom is a big deal, and they need to talk about this game, and they will talk about this game. There's been debate that maybe because Nintendo's being so quiet that they won't be talking about it soon. No, actually, there's information suggesting the exact opposite despite Nintendo being quiet about it. ESRB has rated the game. This means the game is content complete. We've also gotten word of various localizations, people who have actually done voice work for the game. This is the kind of thing that's done late into development. We are seeing marketing come out from different countries suggesting online connectivity of some sort. Could be something really basic, but point is, there is marketing coming out at different parts of the world. There is a gearing up here. Let me also bring up, there is a statue that looks amazing of Link from Tears of the Kingdom that came out a few months ago. Nintendo has major significant promotional materials ready for this game. They are holding back on it for whatever reason. If anything, the situation we're in right now is almost like they're kind of tearing at the seams here. There is so much information that is being held back with Tears of the Kingdom that they are about to burst. There are different rumors and leaks popping up. Some may be true, some may be not true. Right before the new year, we saw this leak for a potential Tears of the Kingdom OLED edition. There's some debate to its legitimacy, but people are split on it. It's hard to say for sure. There's a good chance it's legitimate. And it was simply more credence to the idea that there is a major marketing campaign for Tears of the Kingdom that is being geared up and prepped, and Nintendo needs to start really soon. We even have some information from Paul Gale Network, someone who's been in the industry for years, who has contacts, who's heard that something may be coming in January, be it a Direct Mini or a game-specific Direct. Now, I'll say that, in my eyes, there's no way it can be a Direct Mini, because you can't have a Direct Mini and not talk about Tears of the Kingdom. And if Tears of the Kingdom is in it, then it's not a Direct Mini anymore. It's a general Direct. It's a big deal. But a game-specific Direct is different. And I could see a game-specific Direct happening before there's a general Direct in maybe February or March. It makes tons of sense, actually. And that is what's rumored right now. Potentially some sort of game-specific Direct sometime in January, potentially. Now, I don't know if for sure it'll happen in January. Maybe it happens in February, but If you think about it, Nintendo at some point wants to have a general direct. They need to have a general direct. So they're going to need to talk about Tears of the Kingdom in great capacity, and a general direct will only afford just a few additional minutes for Tears of the Kingdom, like 3 or 4 minutes maybe. They're not going to devote an entire direct on just Tears of the Kingdom when they have other things to talk about, unless they also have a dedicated presentation for Tears of the Kingdom. Now, something to consider is that recently we've seen Nintendo have fairly quick announcement to release windows. Xenoblade Chronicles 3, a pretty substantial game with a lot to learn about for that particular game, a lot to market. That game was announced last February and released the end of July. A very short window there. Fire Emblem Engage, we're really close to its release. It was announced last September and it's coming out towards the end of January. That's a very short window here. So while Tears of the Kingdom was announced a long time ago, Nintendo in some ways has almost told us basically next to nothing about this game, so I can envision some sort of major presentation starting in either January or February where they actually start the campaign for this game that's comparable to what they did for pretty much every game that they've come out in the last year or so. We still haven't gotten a trailer for Tears of the Kingdom that's comparable to the initial announcement trailers for games like Splatoon 3, like Xenoblade Chronicles 3, like Fire Emblem Engage. They're being so sparse with their information, but it has to come soon. So I think there's a really great chance that they're going to need to have a dedicated presentation for Tears of the Kingdom, similar to Breath of the Wild back in E3 2016. And while there may still be a general direct and that may still have a significant trailer for Tears of the Kingdom, there's still a need to have a huge focus on Tears of the Kingdom separately. Now, maybe it's not a Tears of the Kingdom direct, maybe it's a massive treehouse instead. Maybe both. I'm inclined to say both, because there's a lot to talk about with this game. It's major, it's substantial. It could be the last big game on Nintendo Switch, as some insiders have suggested. So it's in dire need of advertising and marketing here. So something big is coming really soon for this game. We are so close. Every day becomes increasingly more and more likely that we're going to get substantial information about this. So I'm keeping my eyes peeled. I'm gearing up. I'm ready. Now, what could this direct entail? Well, voice acting, first off. We haven't heard anything about the story in the game, really. There needs to be some voice acting shown off, I would say. Maybe we could see Ganondorf finally talk. That would be substantial. And with that would also come some significant story details. But going beyond story, there's the actual game, and we know so little about it. When Eiji Aonuma announced the delay for Tears of the Kingdom, there is an allusion to the idea that they're going well beyond just the current Hyrule we see in Breath of the Wild and the skies they've shown us in the brief teaser trailers we've gotten so far. There is a huge expansion here. What will that be? Well, that needs to be detailed. What sort of crazy gameplay additions and changes and advancements will we see in this game? Tears of the Kingdom is going to be cutting-edge Nintendo, the best Nintendo can offer in terms of gameplay innovations, most likely. So with a 6-year development time, and they've been building off of Breath of the Wild as a base, as the direct sequel, which would have made development easier, there's gotta be tons of new content and depth and mechanics here that just make this a substantial upgrade over Breath of the Wild. They need to start talking about that. What's so crazy about this game? Why is Nintendo being so quiet and secretive about this game? I'm going to give the Zelda team, arguably the greatest development team in the history of video games, the benefit of the doubt and say that their follow-up to arguably one of the greatest games ever made is also going to impress with this even longer development time building off Breath of the Wild as a base. So Nintendo has something very special to show off here, and I think their plan is to make us a little desperate for this information, because when they finally drop it, it's going to be huge, and it's going to be a complete sprint of information and speculation and discussion for this game leading into its release, which is just 4 months away. We are extremely close to the finish line here, and I think a Tears of the Kingdom Direct is pretty likely. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways, everyone, this is On Just Restart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.